Have you ever wondered how a band initially known for a song that many dismissed as just another angsty anthem completely reinvented themselves, ultimately shaping the future of alternative music?
Great, you are one of the best bands in the world.
Really?
Congratulations.
It's great. Every morning I get up and I think that.
But there must be a sense of, you must know.
Why?
Well, because you must.
Nah, that's a load of old...
Well, today we are diving into a pivotal moment that reshaped the mid-90s music scene and catapulted a British band from grunge-adjacent Misfits to rock royalty. Yes, we are talking about Radiohead's The Bends, an album that was a defiant statement, a complete reinvention, and a blueprint for the alternative sound of the next decade. Hi, I'm Andy Fenstermaker, host of Poetic Wax, a weekly music history series and podcast where I dig into the record collection I've been building since the 1990s to explore the sometimes little-known history of a band, album, or song from within. So, how did Radiohead shed their post-grunge skin, navigate the pressures of sudden fame, and craft a masterpiece that still inspires musicians today? Well, let's find out.
Yeah,
you mean it, yeah?
The troublemaker.
Oh, that's me, yeah.
Oh, that's me.
That's me, yeah. Oh, look at my hair.
Okay, anytime, Rick.
Is that
The early to mid-90s were dominated by grunge and then post-grunge. Record labels desperately tried to recreate the quote-unquote Seattle sound, signing bands that echoed its aesthetics, but often lacked the raw authenticity. In this mostly American movement, UK-based bands struggled to carve out an identity, with a few exceptions, like Bush, breaking through. Then came a band from Abingdon, England, Radiohead. Their debut album, Pablo Honey, in 1993 introduced them to the world, but not as an overnight success. The album's lead single, Creep, became an alternative radio hit internationally, but only after a slow burn rise on international charts.
My next guests have taken self-loathing and raised it to an art form. We offered them several images to play in front of, and they chose really slow cars. So please welcome our very first musical guests, and I really like these guys, Radiohead.
I wish I was special. You're so very special. But I'm afraid.
I go deep into the history of this song and Johnny Greenwood's attempt to sabotage it in another episode. While Creep turned into a 90s anthem, critics and industry insiders viewed Pablo Honey with skepticism. It felt derivative, dipping into the grunge and Britpop influences, but never fully committing. Still, there was something there, a potential waiting to be realized. And that's something we've seen far too often with one-hit wonders, that just never can get over to that next step.
And perhaps people saw you as sort of one-hit wonders at the time.
Creep was like the blessing and the bane of this band. It was a blessing that we got to tour throughout the world, and that was fantastic. But it was also the bane that, you have a song like that on your first album, and the history of bands having a big hit like that on the first album is that they don't go anywhere, And if it had been on third or fourth, it would have been fine. But the frustrating thing was that we always thought we knew we had the material. And while we were recording it, even last year we were sort of going out on tour and still sort of promoting Pablo Honey in like Mexico and Thailand and stuff like that. And it was always Creep, and it's like, hang on a sec, we're in the process of recording 22 new songs that we're like really proud of.
Following Creep's success, Radiohead hit the road for an exhausting promotional tour. The relentless schedule took a toll, both physically and mentally, on frontman Tom York, who later described feeling disillusioned and drained. Yet, this period of intense live performances became a crucible for the band's evolution.
Our whole lives changed, and we had to get to the point where we could change them back again to actually continue. So we had to get some semblance of normality. It was just because as I said, we hadn't expected it, and it happened a bit too quickly, maybe. And it was just one song, and it was the sort of song that, like Beck's Loser, it was sort of, you can't get away from it, really, because it is such an obvious statement, and the irony was kind of lost on people.
Radiohead honed their instrumental skills, and York's discontent on the road provided raw material for new songwriting. Most importantly, Creep's success gave creative leverage, the kind that would allow them to push boundaries without too much interference from EMI. The first glimpse of their transformation came with the My Iron Lung EP in late 1994. The title track signaled a new direction, distancing them from the grunge-era sound of their debut. But the real metamorphosis was happening behind the scenes as they worked on what would become the Bends. Unlike Pablo Honey, where York led much of the songwriting, the Bends was a true band effort. The creative process evolved as follows. Tom York shifted more towards rhythm guitar. Johnny Greenwood took charge of lead, adding experimental textures. Ed O'Brien sculpted atmospheric soundscapes, expanding their sonic depth. In particular, O'Brien has credited a lot of the sound he created on the album to his delay pedal, the Boss DD5. Recording the Bends was a multifaceted endeavor that spanned several renowned studios, each contributing uniquely to the album's distinctive sound. The initial sessions commenced in February of 1994.
So the Bends was originally recorded at Rack Studios, which is a studio in London.
Despite the high-pressure environment with expectations to replicate their success of Creep, the progress was sluggish. John Leckie has commented on the recording process, noting that new songs were pouring out of Tom York.
They just sent me a demo tape and said, what do you think of this band? And I thought, wow, the singing is just amazing. The singing and some of the guitar stuff made you jump. The guitar made you jump and the singing made you feel a bit, and I could tell, it's always easier for a producer if you have a good singer.
But there were challenges in getting everything right. They struggled with fake plastic trees, which I spotlight in yet another episode. Other tracks came together more naturally. Planet Telex, for example, was recorded in a single evening, pulling a drum loop from the B-side's Killer Cars. There was also a lot of pain. Each member thought at one point about leaving their contracts and quitting the band altogether. Things were unstable, rough, and miserable.
I mean, when we went to do this album, we were in a pretty bad state, really. Fragile would be to put it mildly.
The tension forced the anticipated October 1994 release date for the Bends to get pushed.
We spent about 7 weeks, nearly 2 months there. I think I ended up doing about 36 tracks with them, which was the Bends with all the B-sides of Iron Lung EP and various. So I think I ended up doing about 34 or 36 tracks there in 2 months. And the band they were happy with some of it. The record company couldn't hear a hit because the record company wanted to follow up to Creep. They wanted something like Creep that was an instant kind of wow thing. And the band, of course, purposely, we're not going to do that, Very few tracks survive from that 2 month session.
Seeking a change of scenery and perhaps a fresh perspective, the band relocated to the Manor, a residential studio in Oxfordshire owned by Richard Branson. This shift proved beneficial, as the relaxed rural setting allowed Radiohead to experiment more freely and collaboratively. It was during this phase that they re-recorded tracks like The Bends, capturing some of the energy that would define the album.
And here they are in the Manor. And of course, all these records were done on tape. Most of it was 224 tracks slaved together. And there's a track on there called Nice Dream. I don't know if you know that record, Nice Dream. And I had this stupid idea, it's my Phil Spector thing from going back to All Things Must Pass. I said, what we need is lots of big acoustic guitars. Let's get Badfinger in to play acoustic guitars. What I wanted was lots of acoustic guitar orchestra. And so the whole band got out on the lawn and played acoustic guitars. And
the final touches were applied at the iconic Abbey Road Studios in London in November of '94. Here the band utilized the studio's rich history to refine their sound.
was when
The mixing sessions at Abbey Road were crucial in balancing the album's sonic elements and ensuring that the intricate guitar work and Tom York's emotive vocals were presented with clarity and impact. Throughout the process, EMI got increasingly nervous. Their visits to the studio during recording sessions were awkward. It was clear that Radiohead was going in a different direction than they envisioned, and the pushback of the release date for the Bends further escalated tensions. During the mixing process at Abbey Road, EMI actually sent tracks to Sean Slade and Paul Caldry, who had recorded and produced Pablo Honey. This definitely didn't help things. In the end, producer John Leckie only mixed 3 songs on the album, and Nigel Godrich, who would go on to produce much of Radiohead's subsequent work, would record the album's B-sides in Leckie's absence. One of which, Black Star, actually made it onto the album. The combination of diverse recording environments and evolving production collaborations contributed to the rich sounds that make up the Bends. Contrary to what you might think, it being disjointed and disorienting, it actually comes together quite nicely. Leckie and Godrich played crucial roles on the album, as you'd expect. Godrich helped Radiohead understand the studio as an instrument, opening up a new world of sonic possibilities. The band has also credited Leckie with demystifying the studio environment, something they kind of struggled with during the recording of Pablo Honey.
What about John Leckie?
He's a wonderful man. He's like our long-lost uncle. And he taught us how to use the studio and everything, really. One of the things I'm eternally grateful for is making the studio a place that no longer seemed like some sort of science lab, you know, and actually just seemed like something, you only make something your own when you've learned to use it and abuse it. And that's kind of what we started doing. And John was brilliant at doing that, you know. He took out all the mystery out of recording and made it something that you can enjoy just like playing, you know.
Radiohead wanted to escape the Pablo Honey sound. Their influence had expanded beyond grunge to include space rock, avant-garde music, crooners like Jeff Buckley, and even hints of the Beatles' later experimental work. While the recording process was intense, no doubt about it, delayed by perfectionism and creative friction, it was necessary for the band's transformation. The Bends, released in March of '95, was a direct response to the band's meteoric rise. Even its name, taken from the term of decompression sickness, reflected their internal struggles with fame.
The feeling of this album is that sense of being uprooted and going, wow, what's left? You know, I've got no way of connecting with anything, not my personal life at home, not with the people we're playing to, not with anything. And it's not just in reference to the music business, you know, the music is just, that's one of the things that was going on. And it was just this sense of just being, you know, put in a mothership and travelling around the stratosphere and not having any connection with anybody. And then, but actually coming through the other side of that and actually celebrating it.
Musically, though, it was a revelation. High-energy rock anthems like Just and My Iron Lung and Bones showcased Radiohead's aggressive triple guitar attack. More introspective moments like Fake Plastic Trees and High and Dry highlighted their newly refined sense of restraint. Meanwhile, experimental tracks like Planet Telex, Sulk, and Street Spirit Fade Out hinted at the sonic landscapes they would explore a few years later on OK Computer. The album silenced any accusations of Radiohead being a one-hit wonder band. Instead, it established a new musical identity, paving the way for the groundbreaking experiments on OK Computer, Kid A, and literally anything they've released since. Critically, The Bends was a game changer. While it lacked a singular global hit like Creep, it was appreciated as a cohesive, front-to-back masterpiece. Let's look at the accolades. Certified 4 times platinum in the UK and platinum in the US, with over 3 million copies sold worldwide. Fake Plastic Trees' inclusion on Clueless boosted mainstream awareness, and it inspired an entire generation of post-Britpop artists, including Coldplay, Snow Patrol, and the band Radiohead loves to hate, Muse.
Bob Mortimer used to go on about you, and I used to pretend I'd listened to you, and I hadn't really listened to you. He used to say, they're a great band. I said, yeah, they're great. Hadn't listened to you. Couldn't be bothered to.
Miserable gig.
Well, but then I went to see the film Clueless.
Ah.
And this was in Clueless, and I bought the soundtrack. I thought, man, that's a great band.
Even established acts like R.E.M. and The Cure took notice, drawing inspiration from the album's polished production and emotional depth. In fact, Radiohead would join R.E.M. on tour after its release. Most importantly, though, the Bends marked a creative turning point for Radiohead. They refused to stagnate, continuously pushing their music into new and uncharted territory. The Bends was a bold artistic statement, proving that Radiohead was far more than just the band behind Creep. In many ways, The Bends was the album where Radiohead truly found themselves. It was a statement of artistic independence, a declaration that they were not just another post-grunge band clinging to the fading echoes of the early 90s. Instead, they carved out a distinct sound, one that blended raw emotion, innovative production, and a newfound sense of confidence in their songwriting. It set the stage for OK Computer, Kid A, In Rainbows, and the genre-defying explorations the band would follow, proving that Radiohead's trajectory was one of constant reinvention rather than repetition. Looking back, The Bends remains a cornerstone of alternative rock from a band that refused to be boxed in, and it's a reminder of the moment that they truly took flight.
When we were at the Manor, someone said, hey, you know, there's a crop circle down the road, you know, and if you know, we went off one day and there's Radiohead, like, exploring the crop circle there. It's the magic crop circle, they're standing there getting the vibes. You know.